I guess one has to have been abused or poor to truly understand the point of many of my stories. I don't write my stories to try and make others think that I'm a wonderful guy. Truth be known, I'm not a wonderful fellow. I can be a bit of an ass sometimes. If you don't believe that, ask my wife. But what I am is a grown man who never forgot where he came from, and I've never forgotten those who helped me along the way. Many had very little for themselves, yet they shared with me. This here money. I had just turned 14 and I was living under the direction of the juvenile court in a small boarding house on Market Street in downtown Jacksonville, Florida. On the way home from my job at Murphy's Heating and Sheet Metal Shop, I happened upon a small wood frame house that was in full flames. Standing out on the street was a woman, her arms wrapped around these three small children. Next to her was a man who was down on his knees, his hands covering his face as though he were crying. Within minutes, the fire trucks began to arrive and people were running in every direction. I stood there watching as a small wooden house finally collapsed in on itself. "Where do you live?" a police officer asked me. Not here. No, sir. I think that woman and that man live here," I told him as I pointed at the couple. The police officer walked over and began to question the family. Within 30 minutes, the fire was out and there was nothing left of the house except a smoldering pile of embers. "What's we going to do?" the woman asked the man as she began to cry. The man just stood there shaking his head back and forth. "We got nowhere to go," the woman yelled out at her children as she began hugging them. "Hey, I got this here room at the rooming house. You can stay there for tonight. I'm sure it'll be all right," I told him. The woman said nothing, and within several minutes, the 5 or 6 of us were walking toward my rooming house. When we arrived, my landlady was standing out on the front porch. As we walked up onto the deck, I could see from the look on the landlord's face that something was not right. She told the family to sit down on the wooden chairs and asked me to come inside with her. As we walked down the hallway, I explained to her that the family had nowhere to go, that their house had just burnt down, and that they would have to sleep outside in the cold. "Well, there's no way they can stay here. Those people are Negroes. Can't you see that, young man? But they got nowhere to go. That's not your problem, and it's certainly not your problem or my problem." "But what are they going to do?" I inquired. "Look at me," she said, cocking her head to one side. "It's not your problem, and there's nothing that we can do for them. Now you go out there right now and you tell those people they have to leave the premises immediately," she continued. Slowly I turned and I started walking back down the dark hallway. That was the longest walk I ever had to travel. Halfway down the hallway I stopped and I looked back at her. "Come here for a minute," she told me. I followed her to her door leading into her room. I stood outside while she went in. Several minutes later she came out and she handed me $5. "Give this to that family and tell them that's the best we can do." "Can I see if anyone else will give them a little money?" I asked her. "Just this one time, but don't you be doing this anymore, okay?" "Okay," I said as I smiled back at her. As fast as I could, I traveled from door to door telling the story of the family who had lost everything. Out of the 28 rooms, I raised almost $60. When I had finished, I walked back to the landlady's room and I showed her money. "I'm really surprised," she said. She stood there shaking her head back and forth. "You see, there is something that we could do. All we had to do is just keep trying real hard," I told her. "You are something else, Roger Kiser." I walked back out onto the front porch and I explained that it was the rules that no one was allowed to stay in my room. "There ain't no black people live here, so all this here money came from white people. And they all feel real bad that you ain't got no place to go," I told them as I held out the handful of money. "Everybody who lives here gave money?" asked the man. "Everybody that was home and in their rooms," I told him. "Can you tell them that they can get a free shoe shine any time if they come down to the Trailways bus station?" the man told me. As far as I know, no one ever went to the Trailways bus station to collect their free shoe shine, including myself. However, 2 or 3 years later, I had joined the Army and had returned to Jacksonville from basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. When I walked into the bus station, I saw a man shining shoes. I walked over and sat down in one of the 3 chairs, placed my feet up into the stirrups. The man said not a word as he shined my shoes to an absolute glow. After he was done, I got down from the chair and I held out a dollar bill. "Don't guess you want that free shine, do you, Mr. Roger?" asked the man. It took me several seconds before I recognized the gentleman. Slowly, I stepped down from the high bench seat, and he and I hugged one another. "I would be honored to have that free shine," I told him.